Today, I'm joined by Jonnie Jensen, the founder of the High Value Man Project. Johnny is a man who knows what it means to hit the wall, to lose the thread, and choose not to stay lost. We're going to talk about what happens when men abandon themselves for others, why putting yourself first isn't selfish, and it's actually the beginning of becoming trustworthy. And then also, we're going to talk about how legacy isn't built in grand gestures, but in small daily vows. Johnny, welcome.
Good to be here, Jeff. Thanks so much for having me on.
So let's get right into it. I'm curious, when did you start to notice that the very men you set out to serve are the ones most likely to abandon themselves?
We've been conditioned as guys, right, to be the provider, and so what it means to be successful as a man probably means get a job, get married, have kids, get a home, not whatever the right order is. Do you know what I mean? So we are conditioned to provide. But the thing is, when then a man's identity is based around having all those things, and we put all those things first, we do so to the detriment of our own well-being. And that's what too many men don't realize. And it's like this idea that if I just keep going, I'll be okay. If I just keep going, she'll be happy. The kids will grow up. Everything will work out. We'll have enough money. And as they've put all this energy into those things, it's not getting better, but there's still not a lot of space to turn around and go, hello, can everybody, like, if I could just let you know that I'm really struggling here right now, but don't worry, I'll carry on. I don't need any help. We don't even do that, right? We just like, how's it going? Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. Good. Have a beer, crack on. And there's been an increasing, discussion and awareness in the last sort of 5 or 7 years about men speaking up and men's mental health, but still, we don't look after ourselves enough. And although it's cliched and you hear it a lot of times, when they say on a plane, put your own mask on first before you put other people's on, there isn't a clearer, crisper way of explaining that. And that's what it's not selfish, right? It's self-leadership. And actually, our kids need to see us strong as leading. Our wives respond better when we are grounded and confident and clear and leading the family, not telling everyone what to do, right? We're not talking about that, but leading the family. When we don't do that, it's like a downward spiral. It's a low value existence.
Has there been a time you put your own needs aside, and what was the cost of that?
Well, yeah, I did it. I did it in my marriage. It was the exact story that I just told. I was under the impression, and I don't think this is necessarily wrong, but I need to look after my wife. I need to look after these 2 babies. I need to grow the business. I need to provide. And I was exhausted. My wife was poorly after our daughter was born. We had some miscarriages and things like that, right? And I was like, I've just got to look after, I've just got to get her better. Now, there came a point in that journey where our relationship was really broken. You know, the day you search Google for "Am I burnt out?" the answer is definitely yes, right? There's no you don't ask Google that or ChatGPT nowadays unless you are totally burnt out. And then my brother sadly took his own life in front of a train in December 2014, just after Christmas. And it was at that moment where I had nothing left. Now that incident on its own would be upsetting for a lot of people, right? But it was the last straw. I had nothing left to give, basically. And that's where I've been coming from, like putting all that other stuff first to the detriment of myself. And what that looks like in a man's everyday life is some kind of working really hard, not exercising enough, not really seeing his mates enough, not having his own interests or making time for himself. So there's a level of mental, physical, emotional well-being that we're not taking care of, let alone our connection with others.
I'm always interested in the why behind why something's going on. So why do you think that we're at this place where we're having so many men burned out? Why are they putting themselves last? I understand we've been conditioned for that, but what's going on under the surface?
I think a lot of the societal norms are unraveling in our hands. literally in our hands with the flipping devices. Now, I use my phone just as much as the next person, right? But when you look at what's gone on in the world, particularly since lockdown, right? But there was problems beforehand. So much of life is fast paced. The pressure around finances is ever greater. Women's rights and the role of women important, right? It's not about men versus women, but there's so much been spoken about, flipping racial equality, LGBTQT. Like there's so much there's so many agendas that have a high profile, but across the board, whatever race you are, whatever gender you are, there's still like the major proportion of the people on this planet are men. And so the challenges that men face aren't necessarily being addressed. They're not being given the space for it. So we just keep going, hoping that it's all going to work out. But in society now, we actually spend less time together. There is less social time. If you go to the average pub or bar, there's less people there. And I think that, historically men have congregated in these places. And even if we weren't talking about how we were still connecting. We were still having a laugh. There was the banter and the camaraderie of it all. And I just don't see that existing too much in the world today. And I think that's a significant problem for men.
I see so much hate online, especially on social media. And I know social media is such a cesspool. So I acknowledge that completely. But there seems to be a lot of hate for men on there. Is that hate founded on truth? Like it's like he didn't do the bare minimum. There's a lot of talk of sexual assault, which is its own conversation. There's anger towards men in the house, the doing, like I said, the bare minimum, but also weaponized incompetence. I hate that term so
Yeah,
much.
yeah. I've not heard it like that, but I get exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Where's that coming from? Like, what's this disconnect? If men are, help me connect that to men are feeling overwhelmed, but there's this disconnect of women being angry at men. Like,
Yeah.
what's going
Okay.
on
So
there?
that's a good subject, right? So the subject of men not doing enough around the home, women still feeling like they've got to flip in, sort the kids out in the morning, get the breakfast, put the washing on, think about who's got a doctor's appointment later that day, and then make sure that the dinner is bought and cooked in the evening. There is still a percentage out there of men who function like that. Now, I don't know what percentage that is. Certainly in my circle of friends, it's not happening. Okay. And that doesn't mean like just my circle of friends in Maidstone, England, right? I'm talking about all my friends from university now who are scattered across the country, the globe. I spent a significant amount of time in America, living in Chicago, and my friends there, right? And so there's a general level of equality and sharing responsibilities there. So it is perhaps still a demographic, an age demographic, where there are a proportion of men who aren't doing enough. Now, because of social media, their wives, particularly if they're all reaching middle age now, 40, 50, where they're like, I've had enough of this. And they have a platform where they can share it. And they not only that, they have a platform where they can easily congregate around other people that are saying, do you know what? My ex is a pain in the ass like that as well. But here's the kicker. I don't think that is the big proportion of men. I think that the large, significant percentage of men are just generally decent blokes, decent dads, decent men who want to go to work, who wouldn't think of flipping whacking their wife because the football team the football score didn't go right and they drunk a six pack. But it's very easy for that to become the headline news. In particular, as well, supporting that point is crimes against gender are too often, particularly the ones that are reported, are too often male against female. So you get this narrative of men are dangerous, men are predators. But it's not all men. Like if you go out and you buy a pit bull terrier and it flipping eats your kid, does that mean all dogs are now done? No, it's just like that's a particularly shitty dog, basically. But this pressure is building up. It's a pressure where the middle guy, the average guy, is feeling like, hang on a minute. Not only do I do my bit, but my buddy over there and my Uncle Jim, or whatever his name, they've been divorced and now they are screwed for life because the system has not given them a fair shout at being a dad, not even about money or anything like that. It's just not giving them a fair shout at being a dad. So you've got all these pressures going on in the world. And thankfully, men are starting to find the voice. The average man is being driven a lot by men that have been through divorce. They're now finding their voice and saying, hang on a minute, this isn't okay. And it's being supported from the top down by the awareness of male suicide and, particularly certain industries like farming and construction, and where like these are average Joes who are taking their own lives because they're so miserable with what's going on in their life. So there's a lot of factors, but in a way to answer your question in a slightly different way than it was that was asked, is that men do need to come together and find their voice. Women have been fighting for their rights for the last 200 years. If you look at the suffragette movement and Emily Pankhurst in the UK and whatever that might have looked like in the US and Canada, apologies, women have been finding their voice for the last 200 years. Men have just been cracking on with it or going to war or whatever else. And now we're finding this world where we can sit there and we can play an Xbox and game, or we can buy weed from pretty much anywhere. We can drink beer. We can distract ourselves with garbage food. We can watch porn online. There's a mess. Like if you look at like what's going on in the world, it really, really is a mess. And that's why more men, more average guys need to step up and say, do you know what? I want to be a role model in my family and in my community. I want to be a voice for solid relationships. I want to lead in my community, or be a figurehead in my business, or even own the business. That's what we need to see more of.
It sounds to me, I've had a similar thought to this, so maybe you correct me if you disagree with this. It sounds like women have been evolving over the last 200 years. They're in the workforce now, um, and everything that comes along with that, taking care of kids, as well as working, as well as putting dinner on the table. And it seems to me that they're calling men forward, and men don't necessarily know how to step into that because we're smoking weed, we're watching porn, we're playing video games, and that there's that disconnect.
It's a massive disconnect. Women are incredible. I mean, let's get this straight, right? Women, they can handle a lot more than we can, right? Men are built for fighting, right? Men are built to be resilient, to get through things. Like if you need to get up a mountain in a blizzard, right, stick the bloke at the front. I know there's exceptions, not trying to flip and say women can't climb mountains, right? But like when the chips are down, stick the guy at the front and let's just get us through this, okay? But meanwhile, who'll be behind managing the kids and keeping everything all sorted and stuff? So it's no surprise you put women in the workforce. I'm a disaster when it comes to staying organised and stuff. Ask me to be creative. Ask me to put a team together. Ask me to stand on stage and lead something. Like all my strengths are great, but there's other stuff that the women, certainly the incredible women in my life, have been so much better at. So in terms of men being asked to step forward, and this does tip into a problem we see in the school and education system, where around the world young men and boys are underperforming versus the girls, like significantly.
Well, I
And
was
that's
going to ask you sorry to interrupt. I was
yeah,
going to
sure.
ask you what the cost was if we don't support men to step forward, if we just let men stay where they are.
I think it's the likes of Donald Trump and Netanyahu and even Putin and like it's like when you keep men small, nasty men take over, right? But there's a reason. I've never studied all this enough, right? So I'm well aware that there's limitations to my wisdom around this. When you look back at nomadic tribes and Red Indians and Native Americans, like native tribes, there's a reason why there's a whole structure there. There's a respect and a community and a belonging where they work together as a tribe. Now, when you separate men out and let them all just wander around and do their own thing, it's a mess. So it is time for men to define what, and the word masculinity throws up all sorts of flipping arguments and shitstorms these days, right? But it is for modern men to decide what it looks like for men to lead as we move into this new era of of mankind. Because make no bones about it, with AI and stuff, we are moving into a new era. And our kids, this is the biggest evidence of it, Jeff, is that our kids are struggling. Our kids are not coping well. They're not, then only a small percentage are coming out fine, right? But a lot of them have got anxiety problems, intersocial, personal skill problems. So much of it it's tragic. And what it takes is for men to start working out, okay, and it's about reading and knowledge and the stuff that's been written for the last 4 or 5 thousand years. It's all good stuff. Whether you go back to the Stoics or the Japanese, Chinese, go and have a look at what Jesus said. I'm not an expert on Muhammad, but I dare say it's all very good stuff, right? The lessons are there. And then even go to modern times, whether it's Napoleon Hill or Jim Rohn or whoever it might be, like wherever Wayne Dyer, there's it's the wisdom's out there. Obviously church disintegrating around the world is an issue as well, right? But men just need to work out what it is to lead confidently, to be clear on who they are and what they stand for, to shape their families like that. And when the chips are down, they don't crumble because they've tried to look after everybody else first. They're solid and now they're carrying everybody else. So women do need us to step forward because what women want from men is security, to feel safe.
You've painted quite a picture there. It seems like what you're saying is we're missing wisdom, that ancient wisdom, and I agree with you. It's around today, and there are books on it. To add one more to your list there, even Ryan Holiday's stuff.
Oh, I love his stuff. Yeah, The Order of
Yeah,
Man,
yeah,
that guy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Sovereignty is a good book of his. Yeah.
So it's available, but we don't seem to be valuing wisdom. Uh-oh, I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about books and wisdom
Yeah,
and
yeah,
why
yeah.
men
What
aren't
did you say? Shoot. It's gone. It
come
fell
on,
out.
Do you know what it is? That is male menopause. How old are you, Jeff?
I'm
Come
not that
on.
48, 49 in
48.
a week.
I'm 51, right?
49. Are
51.
you?
It's
Male
real.
menopause.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it's called adrenopause or something like that, right? So the idea, thoughts just like flipping slip out my mind like a
Good Lord.
sand in my hands,
It doesn't normally happen to me.
No, that's
Okay.
fine. But you're asking about books and wisdom and why men aren't going out there and getting it. Something around that?
Yeah, why are we missing that wisdom? Like it seems like we were talking before we started recording about, World War II, a lot of men went there. A lot of men came back, but they didn't really come back because they left a part of themselves overseas or in the war. It almost seems like that wisdom, there's a loop in the chain that's missing.
Here's the crazy thing, right? Everyone listening. We're only about 3 generations from all those millions of men being killed, right? My granddad, he was war age and a bit like, I don't know the story of exactly why my granddad wasn't actually in the war, but he was back at home on doing war duties basically. But my grandfather on my mum's side, he was in the RAF during the Second World War. So we're not talking about like, oh, black and white movies, like, oh yeah, in history, go and get a book. No, my grandparents. So my kids, and thankfully there isn't I haven't experienced too much of this, but my kids could be being influenced by my dad's behavior towards me, right? Or my perspective on my kids. Now, when I was young, when I was a little kid, I got a few thrashings off my dad, which in today's world would be completely unacceptable. He got thrashed by his mum, right? So that's where, but here we are in a world today where we have to adjust and we have to learn about things. What I've done in my life since I was about 30 on my personal development journey, actually about 20, younger than about 20, 25, my personal development journey and starting to understand and learn about, well, why do we think like that? Actually, no, life isn't unfair. I do get to choose how I interpret things. Okay, what is a reframe? What if I feel shit about something? What's the opposite of that? And how would I feel if I chose that path rather than this path? Oh, okay. Okay, life is unfair, or is it unfair? Or am I choosing to think of it like that? Like, there's so much about personal development and taking responsibility, faith. I don't even mean about necessarily a religious faith, but a faith that everything's working out, a faith that this ridiculously miraculous rock that we live in this universe that's so mind-bogglingly big. Like, here we are with the opportunity to experience life on this rock, and most of us are miserable. Okay, so it's been written about in terms of understanding and enjoying it. But back to the point, I don't even know how I got off on a tangent there. But back to the point about the generational stuff from the war. Yes, we are. There is a huge pocket of knowledge and role models and leadership and community, camaraderie, industry, let alone having fun, that was wiped out.
I agree. And it almost seems like if I look at my family's history, my grandfather was in a camp.
Yeah,
I'm sure I don't know all the stories. He's shared some of them, not a lot with me, but he saw some of the worst things you can see in life. And then he came back, and all I really remember of him was sitting staring out his window or being angry.
yeah.
And then I'm sure he passed that straight down to my father. And one day I said to my father, I need you to treat me with more respect. And he said, this is the way my father treated me. So this is the way I'm going to treat you. And and that was after years of me being a father. And I didn't treat my kids the way my father, like I knew I needed to do better. It almost seems like we're waking up to that we're no longer we're deciding that that's no longer the way we want to live as a society, and I'm very happy for that. But somebody has to pay the bill, and it feels like
No,
it's this generation.
yeah. And there's a great saying which I only found out was written by a US author in one of his books about hard times create strong men create good times, good times create weak men create hard times. And it feels a bit like we're in a weak men create bad times type situation right now. And
I disagree with that.
okay,
At I think we're at the hard times, or at the beginning of the hard
okay, yeah.
times, and I think that's starting to create the good men. I think it's the very edge of it.
Yeah, you could be right. Yeah. It's just a question of how long we're in that bit for. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And everyone can take a view on that, right? But I just see there's so many people struggling, suffering. There's so many people trying to scam and nick things off each other, rob stuff. Everyone's on the fiddle. It's there's no integrity in the world right now. And that is the worry. And if I'm quite tough on my kids, and the pushback I get from them is a bit mind-boggling. I'm like, but I give them loads of slack. I'm not one of those parents that doesn't let their kids go to a party. I'm not one of their parents that like gets really strict about homework and stuff. I have a clear moral compass, and I tell them, like, keep up. It's a lot easier to keep up in school than catch up. And I'm going to tell you 3 times to do your homework. If you don't bloody do it, then that's on you. You can go and you can beat vegetables in the tests in the supermarket if that's where you want to end up, and I'm fine with that. And you might decide to flunk out of school, but then go on and take on the world in a different way 5 years later. Like, all I want my kids to be able to say is, my dad had my back. He was straight with me, and he told me what I needed to do. I just didn't listen to him.
So how do you talk to the man who's maybe had a shit upbringing and who didn't have that wisdom? He had that broken link in the chain. And how does he do better for his kids than his father did? What does that look like, along with balancing work, you know, helping out in the house, doing all doing all the expectations that men are supposed to do? How does he do better? How does he put himself first? How does he put
Yeah,
his
yeah,
own
yeah. So
oxygen mask on?
there's facets to that. Okay, one part is him tuning into himself. Right? He probably will, if he's honest with himself, and he might never have been honest. Okay, it might have been something he tried to keep down. He'll be angry. It wasn't fair that, if I take myself, right, as an example, I try and put myself in that shoes. It wasn't fair that my dad gave me a few thrashings when I was a kid. It wasn't fair that my mum died when I was 9. It wasn't fair that we, went from having a big, expensive, nice house to living in a council house. It wasn't fair, right? No one ever talked to me about being upset about my mum, right? It wasn't fair, right? So there's my story, right? Now, then there comes a reality check, particularly when we've had our own children, of how do I want my kids to feel? How do I want my kids to see me? What were those nights that I cried myself to sleep that I never want my kid to go through? What are those times where I wondered how to chat up a girl and didn't know who to ask? What's what's my dad gonna what am I gonna say to my kids about that? When I shout at my kids, because I inevitably will, how am I gonna do it differently than my dad did? Right? And by that, I mean, I'm probably going to apologize. I'm going to let them know what I shouted at them for. I'm going to let them know that what my intention was, and I'm going to let them know that I love them, and so we can move forward. And so it's, if that man doesn't create something that isn't like the next chapter, right? He's just stuck in, well, this was my experience. I don't know what to do about it. And it wasn't very fair, and nobody understands me. That's just a victim mentality, right? People feel very stuck in that because letting go of that identity is actually quite scary. I've always been angry. My life's the way it is because of the way I was treated. It's not my fault, and everyone else can shut up, right? It's like a bunker. It's not a very nice bunker, but it's a bunker that you know. So you in it. And then the moment something comes along that really makes you that confronts you with the reality that I'm sitting in my bunker, not really, in actual fact, I'm sitting here kind of recreating the very thing that I was hoping not to recreate. And that's why I react. So when a man can see that for himself, when he can take responsibility for it and be like, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. So then what do I want to create? And for me, inside of the High Value Man Project, I've got a structure for living called the 3XC, which is clarity, courage, and commitment. And the reason I'm going to bring this up is it's actually quite a simple way for the guy that you're talking about to create us, like he can just do this for himself. The clarity is, well, what do I want? What do I want to create? What do I want the experience of my life to be like? What do I want to be for my kids? What are my values? Okay, right. Wow. How close am I to being that? Am I moving towards that goal or vision? Is my relationship like I want it to be? No. Okay. You can't click your fingers and flipping bibbity bobbity boo it. Okay. You just have to get honest with you. That's where you're at. And the next part is courage, recognizing where you've got to let things go, where you've got to forgive people. And that guy, it may well be that there's some things he has to go and say sorry for, which can be very confronting for someone who's a big burly macho guy or someone who doesn't really like to talk. But somewhere in amongst all this, there's a profound moment where you go, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to be stuck in this stinky bunker. I want to go out there and be the man that I actually genuinely, honestly, wholeheartedly believe I should be. And that comes from letting go of the past, right? Having a conversation with your dad. I spoke to my dad one night. I said, what happened that night? What happened, that bad one? And he goes, I remember that. He goes, that's the day we were told your mum was terminal. And I took it out on you. Now, you might have a story like that, right? Where your dad goes, yeah, well, funnily enough, my granddad, your granddad was a prisoner of war and he was struggled and took it out on me sometimes and didn't erase it, but it just suddenly gave me a level of awareness, a level of understanding where I was like, compassion came in. And nothing's about fixing the past, but a bit like a jigsaw with pieces missing. When you can have that real conversation, especially as an older guy, Dad, I love you, but why were you an arsehole to me? Now, if the bloke really is a bit of an arsehole, he might go, oh, shut up. Why do you want to come and ask me that sort of stuff? My dad never told me nothing, so I'm not telling you nothing. And you go, okay, I got that. But I just want you to know that, A, that wasn't really that cool. And I've been upset about it for the last 40 years. But B, I really get it because I'm a dad now. I know how hard it is and I flipping love you. and then you hug them. Not like a hug, like 2-second hug. You hug them and let the feeling between the two of you do the magic. That's the courage part. That's giving something up. That's finding something out that you didn't know. That was like that piece of that jigsaw where you're like, oh, wow. Now the picture is a little bit more complete. Going just to answer keep going with this question about how does that guy take responsibility and improve himself, is that then comes the start to show up as your true self. Like, how do I want to be? If I want to be less angry, right? You can't say, I want to be less angry, right? How am I going to like less angry? You can't do that, right? And particularly if you're upset about something, right? So then you might start to create this new possibility, this new way of being where you go, wow, okay, what's it like when I show up angry? What's the experience like for everybody? Everybody cowers, everybody's scared around, everyone's quiet around me. All right, okay. Well, how about if I was playful? Now, it doesn't mean you're going to turn up with a red nose and a wig on and start doing tricks, right? But if you just be like, wow, okay, so then someone says something to you which you normally would react to, you kind of catch yourself and go, hang on a minute, I'm about to do my anger thing here. What if I was playful, right? Or if playful doesn't work, you might go, what if I was generous? What if I was calm? And you don't have to pick a word and stick with it. You can play with it. You'll be like, oh, playful didn't really work. Well, but calm did, right? Or and you start to just lean into this man that you desire to become, right? And that's courage and showing up as your true self. A lot of these angry guys that are walking around with resentment and frustration. Resentment about the way they are and frustration with their experience of life. So you deal with the resentment and you deal with the frustration. And then the part that comes after that is then commitment. So if you decided that you wanted to be a better dad to your kids, right? And what was missing was doing fun stuff with them. You can't just say, okay, son, we're going to Disneyland, get your gym shoes on, like, let's go and have some fun, right? That would be nice. But what the kid really wants to do is that you hang out with them each week. You start to get interested in what music they're in. I sit and watch YouTube with my son in the front room, like on the big TV. Load of crap. Honestly, they're playing FIFA and they're playing Madden football. They're talking Fortnite. And some of it's funny, like Mr. Beast type stuff. It's funny, Sidemen. But I get that time on the couch with him. And that's in terms of like the third C, the commitment, that's what it's like. In terms of your missus, you're like, right, do you know what? We're going to do date night once a week. And date night doesn't become an argument, by the way. Date night's like, we're going to go and have a nice time. We're going to date like we did when we first got together. A commitment to your friends. Hey, buddy, how's it going? Not seen you for 3 years. What are you doing in 3 weeks' time? Let's go out fishing. Let's go out on the boat. Let's go and whatever it takes. And you start to put the bricks into your life. And that's when the experience suddenly becomes, okay, right. I know what I want. I know who I want to be, and I'm getting after it. Now I feel at peace. Now I feel like the man I want to be. And that's what's missing.
Thinking of some of that hit hard. I don't know I could ever get to that point with hugging my father, especially after how the last time he spoke to me. So I mean, some of us are going with that void. We don't have that even that foundation for a hug. And then I think back to like me at my lowest probably was when I was married, and it was like, well, shit, this is the best my life is going to be.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what would have taken to get out of that rut. Do you find you're meeting men at a certain place in their journey, like after a traumatic event, like a divorce or something like that, or a death, or
Yeah.
some sort of, I call it the baseball bat moment, where life just gives you that
A
baseball
kick in
bat
the
to the
nuts.
head? Yeah, the kick in the nuts. Do you find you're meeting men at a certain point where life is inviting them to wake up?
Absolutely. And I want to meet men before that, right? But I get referrals. I get someone says I should listen to your podcast. And then, wow, okay, that really helped, right? Or someone said, I should come and join the base camp, right? So people get referred to me, but I want there to be a demand of men. Like, this isn't what I want. This is this is a 3-star experience, and what I want is a 5-star experience. I'm a 5-star guy. I know that I'm worthy of 5 stars. Why am I having a 3-star existence, let alone the baseball bat moment? Okay. Because the baseball bat moment comes when you've been living the 3-star experience for far too long.
I
You're
think
like
I
just
was at one
trudging
and a half.
you're just trudging through it like, oh God, can I keep going? Okay. And then it goes, then it's down. Then it goes down because, and this is the high value man, right? My program for men is called high value because when we start functioning in a high value way, it creates an upward spiral. And why I know this is because the common or the more common way is the downward spiral, the low value way. So when a relationship gets tense, before that, right? We have kids and now we're tired. I love this classic line, which I heard a few years ago. Before you decide you're depressed, check you're not just really bloody tired. Anyone who's had kids knows that moment, yeah? So, but you get fatigue and you get fatigue because you've got little kids. Then the relationship gets strained, okay? So now you've got fatigue, you've got these babies, you've got a relationship that's suddenly hitting the rocks when you like, hey, we should be deliriously happy. We've got these 2 wonderful kids and we've got the home and we're married and we're doing it. Like, what's wrong? No, it's suddenly bad. Now you've got all that stress from home that you take into work. Work gets harder, not to mention you're tired as well. So now you're underperforming at work and you've got pressure there. Then you go home and you go, oh, how was your day? I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do about it. Oh, great. Well, here's 10 things that I need you to do now. And by the way, I'm not going to hug you and you're not getting any sex and tough shit, right? So you're like, what? Like, whoa. So then you go, okay, well, I can put up with that for a while. I can understand that. And then, but it's just this downward spiral because then as blokes, what we do is we go into a little bit of despair where we're like, okay, sod it. Well, I'm too tired to exercise, so I'm not going to go running anymore. And by the way, I used to go running with my mates, or I used to play softball with my mates. I'm too tired now. I'm not going to go and do that. Right. So you stop seeing them and then you stop exercising and then you start eating Doritos and drinking beer and stuff. So now you're out of shape as well, which means that you sleep worse. Oh my God, it's a downward spiral. So that baseball bat moment generally comes, this is without even talking about the energetic force that we're giving out in the world, right? When we're a low energy vibration, that kick in the nuts is going to come. Now, I'm not saying that my brother's suicide had anything to do with the demise of my marriage and the end of the road for that chapter of my life, but it came at a point where I had nothing left to give. And no man should put themselves in a position where they've got nothing left to give. That's crazy. That's not manhood. And stuff happens, right? Stuff happens to people. But the reason I can say that so confidently is there are examples all around us people who've had everything they knew ripped away from them and rebuilt themselves and gone on to create something even better. And what one man can do, any man can do. We are at the basic level, a crude machine, magical in every possible way, but we're a machine. So if one person can do it, the other person can do it, give or take height and difference and stuff like that. But as a guy I had on the podcast called Mark Ormerod, a British soldier in Afghanistan, got both legs blown off, one arm up to the elbow, helicoptered off the flipping roadside, died for X number of minutes and was brought back to life, and gets airlifted back to the UK and wakes up in a hospital with his wife at his side and basically, just bits of his former self. Now, he's gone on to break records in endurance records for disabled people. He's gone on and created, property businesses. He's a voice for ex-servicemen in the UK. Now, if he can do that, then us guys, right, who've not been through those experiences but are just having a tough time, we can look at ourselves and go, hang on a minute, what would it take to turn this downward spiral that I described? What would it take to turn it around? And that's where you start on yourself and you go, right, I'm going to go and get fit. Okay. Right. When was the last time I spoke to my buddies? Okay. I'm going to do that. Okay. How's my relationship? Out of 10, my relationship is a 2. Okay. That's not good. Right. What's it going to take? Sit down with your missus. Right. I need to let you know that I would score our relationship currently a 2 out of 10. What would you score it? 3. Okay, great. So we're pretty even. What would you like the relationship to be like? Okay, here's what I'd like it to be like. Okay, interesting. Do you think we've got the same values? Here's my values. What are yours? Oh, that's interesting. What do you want out of life? I want this. Oh, I want the same. Oh, cool. Shall we create a new chapter and start to get our relationship towards a 7 and an 8? Yes, please. I want to do that. And then you start to lead in your relationship. And this is what it's about for men, leading in our lives.
What you're talking about involves a lot of vulnerability, like even just asking the question, do you want to improve the relationship? I can imagine some partnerships are like, nope, I don't care. What's my question here? I think a lot of men tend to avoid vulnerability because often we get punished for it.
Yeah, absolutely. But that goes back to the question at the earlier part of the pod was about what's the responsibility of men today? What's it going to take? And a lot of relationships, one of the ways my girlfriend right now, we've been together 4.5 years. I adore her, right? Our relationship is incredible. It's the relationship I always believed was out there. The difference is I'm not approaching this relationship in any way the same that I've ever done it before. I had to go through a divorce to understand that and get to that point. Okay. But how I show up in this relationship and almost like the ground rules that I set was we're not going to do huffing and rolling the eyes. We're not going to do being in a bad mood with someone for 3 days before you tell them what's wrong. We're not going to do get into bed and turn my back on you and just really punish you like that. We're not doing that. Now, what that takes as a guy is to recognize where your responsibility lies. So something like turning up back at home when and you're half an hour late, and she said, "Could you grab some butter on the way home?" Right, or whatever it might have been, bottle of wine. So you turn up half an hour late and you forgot the butter. Right. So then you walk in and she goes, "Where have you been? Where's the bloody butter?" Instantly, you go, "You don't know what my day's been like. How dare you be like that?" Right. And it's like, boom, you're off. Actually, the high value man goes, hang on a minute, what's that like for her? Interesting. Okay, so I am half an hour late. Okay, right. Okay, cool. And I did forget the bloody butter. Okay, that's not just about the butter. I've just let her down there. She couldn't count on me for anything if I can't remember that. Now, someone might say, chill out, Johnny. That's a bit more significant than this needs to be. But if you keep doing that, lots of those little things like that in a relationship, before you know it, both of you are carrying around all these resentments. So, yes, at this stage of the game, we have to go to a deep level of vulnerability in order to reverse all that. But rather than use maybe the word vulnerability, right? It's how much more can you put up with things the way they are? What would it be like to create it as the way that you would desire it, or to create something new that you both put together? You say, do you know what? If I could do that, that would be so much better than this, so much better. And there's a little part of that, no, a little part, a major part of that as well, where men have got to have the balls to say, do you know what? I don't care what the opposite of, I don't care what a no looks like, because I'm not willing to stay in this relationship the way it is right now. And if that means I'm going to be screwed over, okay, so be it. Who I am on this planet is not to sit in this relationship broken and sexless and miserable, because I can't be the best dad to my kid that I want to be. I can't perform in work like that. And if you want to tell me what it's going to take for this relationship to work out on your side, go for it. I've got a tool that I share for free, right, called the Relationship Reset, and it's just a set of questions, and it's not even a conversation. It's a set of questions that you prepare an answer, and then you just share it with the other person. So you get what it's like for them to be in a relationship with you, and you get where they're headed, and then you go, that is inspiring. I want a piece of that. Great, let's create it. Or you go, oh my gosh, I couldn't think of anything worse. um, we need to break up. And you go, oh, that's really sad. Yes, it is really sad. Actually, we need to, like, whatever, we need to do whatever. Like, if you put a cat and a dog together in a room and said, "Oh, just work it out," you'd be like, "I don't even like dogs. Like, what's going on? Like, just stop it." Right? You need to get the reality check that trying to force something into something that doesn't fit anymore, it's only going to cause problems.
You've talked a few times about taking that pause before you react, and I know old me was very much in that. You would say something, and I would immediately react. But there's like this. It's so small and almost insignificant. It's not insignificant. It's almost invisible. That's the word I'm looking for. But I find it so powerful if you can just have that 25 millisecond delay between what somebody says and your reaction. Can you talk a bit about how you help people build that?
It's practice. It's literally practice. You know, Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off, you know, that's sort of until you become aware that that's even possible. Well, then you haven't got any chance. You're like, well, it's not my fault what comes out my mouth, right? I know that's people don't really say that, right? But it's not my fault. She said this. And so what do you expect? As if I'm going to put up with that, right? We're not getting what's going on for the other person. Plus, we think that we have to constantly defend and justify ourselves. What if the thing that they said was just complete like wind? Just complete blah, 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 blah. Right? And I got a fair amount of this from Landmarks, Landmark Forum, Landmark Education, right? As well as my reading since that time, right? But on Landmark courses, they call it empty and meaningless. So the words that come out of someone's mouth are empty and meaningless, not that they're invalid or that they're bullshit, right? It's that you don't have to react to them. You have to understand that in order to have some of the control that you just asked me about, right? And being in a relationship, and women and kids as well, right? Rather than make this all about relationships, make it about my son, right? My son's a little shit to me sometimes. And I go in there and I'm like about to tell him, you got 20 minutes before you need to go to school. I open his bedroom door and it looks like a tornado had been through there, and all the clothes that I'd washed and folded and put in his room, all he's got to do is put them away. My one thing is I'm not putting them away. I've washed, cleaned, dried, whatever. You put them away, right? Instead of that, he's just chucked them on the floor. So now I say to him, son, you need to those up and put them in your drawer. And then out of nowhere, his response is, why do you always tell me to what? Now, I want to get stuck in. And don't get me wrong, I'm not some Zen Buddha, right? Sometimes I'm drawn in. I'm in the game. I'm like, how dare you talk to me like that, right? Because I'm trying to parent him as well. But there's a bit of me, more often than not, I hope, that catches myself and goes, that's not my son being an arsehole to me. That is a teenage boy pumped full of testosterone who's just reacting to what he thinks is unfair. He's not got the wisdom that I've got. He's not even got the prefrontal cortex to rationalize things that, you know, people don't get that until their 20s, right? So how dare I, right? How dare I start shouting at him as a result of how he responded to me asking him to tidy his room? And that's the difference. And it takes a strength and a grounded masculine presence to be able to go, what she's saying doesn't matter. What my lad just said to me doesn't matter. Where I'm coming from is, that's fine. I get you feel like that, but you do still need to tidy your room. You can rant and rave to me and whatever, but a decent human being, a good young man, knows how to put his bloody clothes away. And the same in my relationship. Don't get me wrong. I'm quite often step somehow out of line and let my girlfriend down a bit. And then when she's upset about it, I'm like, what's that? Don't like, "Ugh," and do that to me. What was that thought? She's like, what do you mean? I was like, I just ballsed up and you had a thought that led you to run a whole number on me, but not say anything. What was it? She goes, oh yeah, you just really pissed me off about so and so and so and so. And I'm like, okay, got it. Yeah, I can see that. And it just handles it. So it is like a real grounded presence for men to be able to slow down time in the moment, like Matrix style, see it happening slow motion and catch ourselves and go, am I in control of this? Actually, what would the right response be now? What would take me to the result that I'm committed to having? Okay, boom, that's what I'm going to do. And don't get me wrong, Jeff, sometimes the response might be, actually, my son's out of line and I'm going in. I'm going in both guns, right? Because he needs to know that he crossed the line right now. But I'm doing it consciously. That's the thing.
I always like to end these conversations with a reflection of gratitude. And it sounds like you've had some tough experiences in the life. You lost your mom at a young age, your brother a decade ago, a divorce. All of that kind of takes a toll on a man. What's the thing you're most grateful for having gone through that, for having experienced that?
Well, first of all, I've just got goosebumps. So thanks for that. Um, that's just a real never dismiss when you get goosebumps. Okay. It's a real presence, something going through you there. And when you notice it, you get like, okay, what was that? I wouldn't be standing here having this conversation, making the difference that I'm hoping to make if I hadn't had those experiences. I was up a mountain with a friend of mine who's not very good at small talk or hugging or vulnerability, right? His response to me being divorced and in a hole was, let's go climbing. We're up a mountain, Austria's highest mountain. And it's not Everest, right? But it's still like 4,000 meters, right? And we're climbing up it and a blizzard comes out of nowhere. And we're like, whoa! And we had to get all roped up and all our kit on and like the blizzard and you can't see anything. And we're crossing a field of crevasses and it was hairy. All I could think about, hand over foot, was like, how am I going to fix this? How am I going to fix this? And I was focused on the divorce and all that. As quick as the blizzard came, the sun comes out. So of course now we've got to take all the stuff off, right? So we're taking the stuff off. I look back, the dangerous bit was way behind us. So for the last half hour of this sort of 45-minute experience, I'd actually been perfectly safe. And that's when it hit me. Why am I worried and upset about all this stuff? What if it was supposed to happen so that I could do something wonderful with it? And the man you're going to be tomorrow had to go through today. So however bad today is, consider that it's shaping you for the day ahead. And when you can get that, you're like, oh my God, right. What do I do with that information? What do I do with that experience? Where do I take it? And the answer won't always be there, but by at least asking that about having a positive outlook on it, about knowing you're moving towards the vision that you created for yourself, living out your values, being your true self, you get the grounded presence to go, I have no idea what today was about, but who I am is crystal clear. And I've got absolute faith that what's coming ahead is what I'm deserving, what is worthy of me. And I just believe that more men need to come from that place because that's where you stop and help someone. That's where you have the wisdom to tell your kid exactly what they need to know. That's where you bump into an incredible woman because the energy you're giving out is this kind of woman's going to meet me sooner or later. So I really appreciate the question. But yeah, I had to go through all that to be able to make a difference to people in the world today.
I love your answer. It's happening for me, not to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. God, I know we just finished, right? But like, doesn't when I say God, doesn't mean like it has to be, God and Jesus, Christianity, Muslim, or whatever else, right? I have this idea, and if you listen to me on podcasts, you'll hear this before, right? But I have this idea that they're all sat up there. Buddha, Allah, Jesus, flipping, they're all there, right? They're all there. And they're having a little barbecue. And there's a gate. You got to go through the gate to get into the barbecue, okay? So you get up to the front of the gate, and then he says, oh, so Johnny, how's it going? That's good, thanks, good. Yeah, I'm dead. Okay, nice one. Yeah, don't worry about that. One question, did you have fun? And the guy's like, yeah, well, I mean, I raised some money for the church and I got married and I did all this and then no. Did you have fun? Like we made that rock with all the cool stuff on it and the water and the clouds and the fish and did you have fun? What a bit. Well, you missed it then.
I can see that. That's certainly the point, isn't it?
Yeah. They gave us everything we need.
But too many of us are busy feeling sorry for ourselves
Exactly.
to see the good stuff.
The magic.
Thanks, Johnny. I appreciated the conversation. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's mega. I really appreciate it. And kudos to you for the work you're putting into this podcast and the difference you're making in the world. And people don't realize how long it takes to put a podcast together and how to stay committed and keep it going. So thank you for inviting me on. Thank you for the difference you're making. And I wish you all the best with your future success.
That was Johnny. If you heard something in there that hit, stay with it and don't rush to fix it. You can't lead if you're nowhere in your own life. Start there, and I'll be back soon.